the past, I'd say 2 to 3 years, more and more emphasis has been placed on trying to understand the vulnerability of Belize. There has recently been an integrated vulnerability assessment that was carried out for the country of Belize, spearheaded by the National Climate Change Center. They are looking at climate change vulnerability for the different sector, coastal zone, the water sector, the fisheries sector, and so forth.
20 years from now, where I am sitting down right now, where the cruise ships, the cruise people, the tourists, they come in, will this be the very same area that they would be able to enjoy? Would we be able to enjoy the colonial architecture that is still existent right now in Belize City as a part of our heritage? So all of these things you begin to ask yourself, and all of these things have an implication when we're thinking about climate change.
The impacts of climate change are being experienced globally, including here in Belize, where we are extremely vulnerable. Climate change is affecting our ecosystems and our people, especially those that live and work along the coast. Our mangroves, coral reefs, and beaches are the cornerstone of the marine-based tourism industry here in Belize, which supports livelihoods as well as our national economy. The challenge we face as policymakers is how to best promote sustainable tourism development at a national level that will maintain functional ecosystems as well as guarantee economic returns.
When we were approached by NADIA with WWF via the Carib Save project, this initiative, we really saw that it's a wonderful opportunity. Within the BTB, we have an element of dealing with sustainable tourism and sustainable tourism initiatives.
The project has three main approaches or objectives. One approach deals with identifying or understanding the vulnerability of the tourism sector. Which areas are most and least vulnerable to natural threat factors? For example, based on where they bill and how they bill. The second objective deals with looking at analyzing the policy environment, looking at the different policies and legislations that might have some kind of linkage or tie to the tourism sector or to the protection of the natural environment, and see whether or not they might support or undermine sustainable development and climate adaptation opportunity. And the third objective deals with actually, given the gaps that might be identified in objectives 1 and 2, it looks at identifying climate adaptation options that can be implemented at the national level and at the local level.
So when this project came about, we realized that climate change is a huge catchphrase right now. We're hearing everybody talking about sea level rise, carbon emissions. What does it all mean? How does that translate down into any kind of tangible actions that the operators and the guides need to do to ensure that their livelihood is protected? Because that's really what we're talking about here. We stand a lot to lose in terms of if the waters become too warm, the corals are going to die. What are the tourists going to come here to see? We can only show them so much of dead reef before they realize that it's dead.
Climate compatible tourism development project allowed us to do three things. Firstly, it allowed us to build our knowledge base and assess the current vulnerability of Belize's tourism system, which includes the natural environment, physical infrastructure, as well as tourism destination sites. Secondly, the project allowed us to identify those climate resilient areas in our tourism system that we as a country can then thirdly prioritize for adaptation actions and policy decisions that will ensure a sustainable future for the tourism industry.
And there's still a lot more awareness that has to happen, because if we don't keep these issues to the forefront of the developers, and if people are not the catalysts, for causing the awareness, it is an unfortunate precedent that I believe that this kind of uncontrolled coastal development will happen, because you're at a threshold where the country needs to develop. It needs to develop sustainably, but it also needs to understand what is at risk.
With climate change, Belize may lose some markets in one area, but for tourists who are looking for a warmer, constantly warm climate, with sun and not snow, they could come here more often. Or tourists that are looking for more and more inland activities, we can diversify and go inland away from the coast where there's a risk of storms, more storms, or issues related to sea level rise.
Adaptation has to be built into any kind of design plan from the onset. If that is not the case, we will lose our beaches. We stand to lose critical species as well. I mean, and when I talk about the critical species, I'm also talking about marine species.
So there are 4 different levels of strategies that have been developed and applied in other parts of the world. Especially, we focused on identifying strategies that are developed for or used by small island developing states. So which Belize is one of those small island developing states. And it's centered on the tourism industry itself, the government, the financial sector, and the tourism stakeholders, right, like the resorts and tour operators. I would hope that the outputs of this project would be incorporated and taken up by the National Climate Change Office in implementing national policies and national strategies. And it's timely because they're in the process of finalizing that.
The project is looking at how best we can promote climate compatible development for Belize, for the tourism sector, taking into consideration maintenance of the ecosystem, the health of the ecosystem, while also promoting sustainable development within the tourism sector of Belize. So it's going to look at protection of the ecosystems, as well as building or including options that will help the tourism sector develop in a sustainable manner with consideration of climate change impacts.
Participating in a project like this is opening other doors for us. We're seeing other initiatives that are regional. We're talking about from the Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico side, the Mar Reef region, such as the Mesoamerican Reef Tourism Initiative. Out of this project, having successfully partnered with so many internal agencies, we're seeing other agencies regionally that want to partner with Belize and want to partner with BTB. We now know that if you destroy a certain habitat, it might take 200 and something years to recover. That's a little bit out of my lifetime. I'd like to be around for that, but I don't think I will be. So these are the things that we have to think about, is that when we create any kind of plan, there has to be the enforcement.
Tourism in Belize brings in around almost 40% of our GDP, total GDP of our country. So imagine you have a very devastating hurricane come through, or you have an increase in tides where you affect your main tourism destinations. Where will the country then be able to get that sort of economic drive for the country? 40% of your economy is based on tourism. And so, economically, it is a very critical concern for us that climate change is considered as we plan for the future in tourism.
The Climate Compatible Development Project for Belize is being financed by CaribSave, and it's currently being executed by the World Wildlife Fund in partnership with the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute, the Belize Tourism Board, the Belize Ministry of Tourism, and the University of Belize Environmental Research Institute.